Good morning and welcome back to the VIP seat. I'm your co-host Jessie Naor here with Preston, Holland. Sit back, buckle up, and let's take off.
Jessie, it is the holiday season, and it means that news has slowed, but there's still things to talk about in business aviation. I think everybody's a little heads down trying to get their deals done by the end of the year.
Yeah, Christmas is upon us, and maybe next year, what it is in your stocking or in your request might be a Chinese business jet out there. So Comac, which is China's state-owned commercial aircraft company, they already have regional jets and larger aircraft. They're showing that they're going to start producing a BBG or BBJ type aircraft called the CBJ, the Comac business jet. They just showed it at an exhibition in Guangzhou, signaling serious intent to complete a large cabin VIP aircraft market currently dominated by Gulfstream, Bombardier, and other Western OEMs. So, what do you think? Are you going to be buying a Chinese aircraft anytime soon, Preston?
I think it's another reason for Trump to say the word China, and for that I am excited about.
China, 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 China.
Yeah, so it's basically, it is not a Gulfstream competitor. Like, to be clear, I think even drawing that parallel is kind of unfair. It's like maybe a Challenger 850 conversion competitor, or like the Legacy 600 competitor, which are just converted airliners. It's more akin to that than calling it really a business jet. The performance isn't great. It's kind of like, when you order something from Temu or like TikTok Shop and you think, oh, this is going to be cool. And then you get it and you're like, it's almost what I ordered. Maybe it's like really, like, for instance, the M&A gong, great example, right? You think you know what you're getting and then you get it and you're like, oh, okay. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I have a feeling that this is going to be very similar for business aircraft buyers. They obviously have a market for this in China. China is a growing market for both Bombardier and Gulfstream, but I don't know how many people are buying converted regional aircraft. They don't sell that great in the US either. So, maybe the Chinese, instead of saying like buy US goods made in the USA, maybe it's kind of the same thing in China. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what Trump's going to have to say about a business jet made in China, first of all, from the tariff perspective. So geopolitics aside, if we put that into its own little bubble and assume, okay, this thing actually gets to come to America and it's not tariffed at like 100%. What's interesting to me, a lot of people don't realize this, and it came as a surprise to me too, but even in the private yachting industry, there's a lot being built in China that you would not expect. Nordhavens, for example, are a very large, there's one that's 120 feet, super yacht. Some of those are being made in China and purchased by people all around the world. So I can't say I think that's going to translate directly over to the US and European market in airplanes, but I will say we've seen stranger things, and I would have never expected people to buy super yachts from China, yet here we are. They're buying them from China, from Turkey, Croatia, all around the world.
Yeah, so one of the configurations of this aircraft comes in seats 29, which makes it kind of a ERJ 145 competitor for, the 2x2 or the 1x1 JSX type competitors for the super commuter airliners. The range isn't great. The altitude isn't great. It can I did read something that it was specifically designed or re-engineered to be able to land at some of China's like really tricky airports that are at really high elevations. So I think that's interesting from a consumer perspective, but they're not really selling anywhere other than China. You look at Bombardier, that's a Canadian product. You look at Embraer, that's a Brazilian product. Airbus, which is a French product, and then Boeing is the US, right? That kind of rounds out the big four. You've got, you have little bits and pieces here and there, but those are really the big dominant commercial airliner manufacturers. I don't see a Chinese competitor coming in and being able to be competitive because you have tariffs and no one wants to buy stuff built in China, especially something that's competing against Embraer, which is, Brazil's an ally, or with Bombardier, Canada's an ally, right? I can't imagine the US, the largest market for something like this, would get excited about it. They have not had a ton of success in the commercial space, so I imagine that translates almost one for one. again, I'm going to go back to the idea that it's unfair, in my opinion, to compare this to like a G500 replace. Like, you're not going to get a Chinese businessman that's going, I think I'm going to skip the G500 and go with the CBJ C909 that can go like 2,000 nautical miles, right? Like, it's just not really a comparison. It's interesting. I mean, they're competing in the same sector as some of these converted regional airliners. Is that the world's largest market? No. Is the US a big market for that? Yes. Maybe like emerging Asian markets. I know India's growing really fast. Maybe that's a competitive market. The Dubai area, who,
Middle
Dubai
East.
doesn't really care. The Middle East in general is like, we
Yeah.
don't care if it's from China, like whatever. Those might be markets that I could see competing really well in this space, but I don't see it like, is it a threat to Gulfstream shareholders? This is not financial advice, but I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Well, at least for now. I will say, look, if they get any legs in Asia, if people really start to buy these things, it could put some pricing pressure potentially on, the Airbus corporate and the BBJ market, maybe. But again, there's just so many things that have to go through here. But at the same time, China has a tendency of financing the industries that it wants to see successful very, very heavily. So that can bring some cost pressures down. But it's all going to depend on, is Europe going to allow it? Probably not. They like their aviation industry. Is America going to allow it? No, we like our aerospace industry. So we'll see how this goes, but it's definitely not going to be the best airplane in the world. Those are only made in the US.
Yep, that's exactly right. One other just kind of side note comment. Anybody in transaction world knows this, but if you have an airplane that comes out of China, it's a giant red flag. Like, during COVID, there was people that were importing these G5s and 650s out of China and flipping them for stupid money, like in the US. And that was happening because of the craziness that was 2021 and 2022. But if you really double click and you see China in kind of the ownership log, like, it's an automatic red flag because their corrosion standards are totally different. Their maintenance standards are totally different. Like, they don't always hangar their aircraft, right? So there's like, it's like when you get a Chinese imported aircraft, there's a bunch of cobwebs you have to be on the lookout for. I would imagine this being pretty similar, even from an OEM, because it's just different. It's not as high of a standard from a regulatory standpoint, things like that, when you're in China, when you're bringing an aircraft out of China. That's just kind of my general take.
Yeah, and true, I was talking about the super yachts, but it's not like they're branded as, a Comac super yacht. They're branded as a Nordhaven. The times that I think China has been successful into breaking in these kind of luxury machinery areas is because they're using the prestige, the brand that already exists from the West, and then they're slapping that on, a manufacturing process that happens over there. So yeah, interesting story.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, that brings us to everybody's favorite segment, which is Mile High Madness, where Jessie and I go and find the best social media content of business aviation. And I will go first. So I found this on Twitter, X, for those people who I get corrected on that all the time. I'm an OG. I was on Twitter before it was X. It's both. Is it tweeting or posting? I don't know. But this is the John Wayne departure procedures. And it was super interesting to like see this visualized, because I knew if you've operated in this business long enough, you know that there's a lot of weirdness that comes with the John Wayne Airport. But this basically, for those people who are just listening, it is a comparison of basically, if John Wayne did not have the restrictions, here's what a departure would look like. And then here's what it looks like because of all the ridiculous regulation that goes in because of the rich people mad about airplanes taking off. And if you've been there, like, it's kind of better. It's not it's not like, but this is so much better. But basically, short runway, 5,700, you got to do the NASCAR takeoff, right? Toes in the brakes, pull at 90%, take off. It's pretty exciting. I flew JSX out of John Wayne, and, very light aircraft. So, you get kind of that piece. You do the NASCAR takeoff, and then you climb like a bat out of hell.
Did they give you drinks before takeoff? I'm just curious.
They did. And I was like, I'll take another. This is exactly.
Like the spilling alone.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, whoo, this was fun. So yeah, 5,700 foot runway. And basically you have to get up to about 1,000 feet, and then you got to pull it back to basically not pollute a bunch of noise. And then you basically can start climbing again once you get out over the ocean. So it's pretty crazy. I thought this was interesting though, because it's like, here is everybody else's flight path. And then, John Wayne coming in and like, nope, you have to do all these crazy procedures. So super, super excited. I just thought the side by side was very interesting.
No, it is. And what's interesting to me too is how much fuel is getting burned in that takeoff climb and how much smog is descending in the city that they're trying to like protect against. Like maybe a little noise would be better than a bunch of exhaust falling over your civilians. But, not my place to say.
Yeah, they definitely hit the contrail button before they take off. So
wait, did you see that recently? By the way, this is not part of a social media, but I was purchasing a ticket lately, and I think it's a European standard, but now they're rating the contrail pollution amount when you purchase a ticket on Google Flights or you're searching tickets. And I was like, I have never seen this before, and I don't even know how they're actually calculating this, but it was just sidebar interesting.
It's like if you pay for the no contrail button, then the pilots don't like flip the button and push the button like, yeah, definitely do the contrails here.
Like, I have no idea how they're coming up with this. But all right, so my real social media segment of the day is I found this awesome picture of this Coast Guard Falcon 20 that has afterburners on it. And I was like, man, that's awesome. But then I was doing a deeper dive on this because I'm very curious about why the thing had afterburners, obviously to help like get the narco terrorists back in the 90s. That's why they had this thing in the first place. But the Falcon 20 was the first private business jet, that Falcon produced. So it came off of their fighter jet line. It had afterburners by default, which is why the Coast Guard had it. But for the normal, business aviation passengers, they removed the afterburners. So I just thought that was really cool.
Lame. They should have left him on there. That would have been so cool.
Okay, but then I get even deeper in the tunnel and I realize that the Falcon 20 is the aircraft that Pan Am financed. So Pan Am supported this line by purchasing, I think it was like 180 of them back in the 60s. So that's why the Falcon 20 kind of existed in the first place, was Pan Am investing in them. And it just makes you wonder, if they had the afterburners on them, would Pan Am have succeeded or not?
That is a great question. Yeah, I would say it would help. It would not hurt. That's for sure. Because people would, if you know business jet buyers, there is a group of people who would totally buy it just for that. I mean, just for that fact. Like, yep, it has afterburners. Does it cost another $10 million and another $1 million a year to fly? It does. That's okay. I want afterburners on my business jet.
Yeah, and I always saw the connection. Like I went to the Paris Air Show and Dassault had like, it's fighter jets and it's jets like flying together and you're like, yeah, fighter jet airplanes and they're so fast. Like that is the pedigree. But I guess I didn't realize like how closely that pedigree was in line. Like literally the first one actually was just a little bit different than the Mirage. So yeah, you're flying Falcon, you're flying on a fighter jet essentially.
Well, and just another quick side tangent, a lot of airframes actually have a similar history. The Hawker line has similar kind of origin story. The Learjet line has a similar origin story. Like, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the G300 has a little bit of it in there too, right? Way on back, because the Israeli original manufacturer was also developing fighter jets. There's a lot of tie-overs. The other crazy thing is that Dassault, it's like one assembly line and everybody's cross-trained. So whoever has more demand, like if there's a bunch of Falcon 10Xs that got ordered and haven't been delivered yet, they'll be like, oh, okay, well, let's take everybody over off the fighter jet line and move them over into the business jet line. Like everybody's cross-trained. It's not even like separate divisions. I don't even think it's a separate assembly line. I think it's like, it's all just kind of there together.
Pretty cool. And Dassault should be sponsoring us, but we actually have a better sponsor this week, and that is RealJet.
This week's episode of the VIP seat is brought to you by RealJet. If you've been in the industry long enough, the names Kenny Dichter and Robert Withers ring a bell, and RealJet is the latest private jet iteration from those two. In careers that have helped shape the industry and its products, Real is the next evolution from the jet card and membership models. It's private aviation with a pulse. RealJet is a boutique charter brokerage focused on the discerning traveler, leveraging 25 years of industry experience and relationships with a singular focus, unmatched customer experience. In a digital world, this increasingly commoditized communication, RealJet focuses on personalization. RealJet is a part of the Real family of companies focused on aviation, hospitality, and the latest in sports technology. Real people, real trust, RealJet. Thanks, RealJet, for sponsoring this week. Now back to the show. So, Jessie, we need to giddy up because you're going to see rodeo on the side of a lot more aircraft coming up because Baker has bought a lot of the old Challenger 300s from FlexJet. Alistair White from Corporate Jet Investor did a really great deep dive on this topic in his newsletter, and Baker is really coming in full force. They're going to operate it alongside their fleet of floating Citation 10s. And are going to be now flying a lot of Challenger 300s. So this is pretty exciting.
Yeah, Baker has really kind of come onto the scene very quickly. They're up to 23 aircraft. They market themselves also as wholesale only, which I find fascinating. They're really not trying to go after the retail or the jet card customer. They're really only focused on wholesale. And man, Challenger 300s, 350s are really having a moment right now. It's like such a demand aircraft. I think it's a really good move for them. I'm also very curious what the acquisition price was per plane. What are you thinking, Preston? Like tens?
Yeah, knowing Ken Rickey, I know that he did not lose on that deal. So I would imagine that these were pricey. The thing about buying kind of a rotated out fleet that a lot of people don't understand, and Ken alluded to this in our episode with him, but these big companies like Flex, Netjets, Wheels Up, even to a certain extent, anybody who's buying brand new aircraft, they have a kind of timed cycle where it's under warranty. You have 2 sets of fractional. Then they take the fractional aircraft and they put them into kind of the core fleet that'll maybe do, supplemental lift, and then they'll sell them off. So these are probably high time Challenger 300s. These are not necessarily designed to kind of go into the retail fleet. These are more workhorse birds. They've probably had the interior redone at least once, maybe twice. The engines are probably high time. They probably don't match. This is a total guess. I haven't actually looked up the tail numbers, but my guess is a lot of times when you see these birds, one of the dead giveaways that it was an old net, like XLS and Excels are bad about this, is if the engines don't match the time exactly, or even like remotely close, it's kind of a dead giveaway that it was a charter or that it was a kind of fleet bird before. It's kind of like buying a rental car, right? Like there's nothing wrong with buying a rental car. You just kind of have to know what you're getting into. And for Baker, it makes a lot of sense because they are just doing that wholesale business. So they can really just focus on flow. Like they, at the end of the day, just want people flying on the aircraft. One thing to note about the history is while Baker is a little bit of an older company, this iteration under the current ownership has only been since June 2022. Mm-hmm. So I did a little bit of background research in Al's article and a few other places, is that Baker Aviation was purchased by Tim Livingston. They're based in Fort Worth Meacham Airport. It is a dead giveaway because it says rodeo in big blue letters on the side. So that's something to, you can't miss them, which is, it's a marketing thing. And if they're wholesale only, I don't think it really matters, right? You just know that you're on a Baker airplane. So in 2024, they're the 13th largest U.S. private jet operator by fractional and charter flights, thanks to private jet card comparisons. By the end of 24, it had 13 Citation 10s and its first Challenger 300. And so now they are really doubling down on the Challenger 300. They also have Starlink on every flight. I think they developed the STC for Starlink.
They did. They spent $2 million on the STC for the 10. So
yeah, so you're welcome. So you're welcome, everybody else who gets that. Also, why do people not license STCs? Like that feels like you should be able to recoup that $2 million. Like, hey, we developed the STC, so we'll get 10 grand every time Duncan puts one on until we're paid off, and everybody's happy. That would be
the OEMs do that. They do that. They just don't publicly talk about it very much.
Yeah, I'm sure they probably got some sort of a deal from Starlink because at $10,000 a month, Starlink is pricey, and it's like 300 or 400 grand to put it on a lot of different aircraft. Like people don't realize how expensive Starlink is. I have a client putting it on right now, and I was like, dude, that's a ton of money.
But it's like the thing to have though. Like it's just becoming
you have to have it.
Like for good or bad or whatever it is. Like I've had so many arguments, with the Viasats and the Gogos of the world. People just like it, like they just do. Sometimes it's an emotional choice, and I think for a lot of people it is.
Yeah, exactly. But congratulations to Baker on expanding the fleet. This is exciting. It's good for aviation when fleets are expanding. The Challenger 300 market is going to continue to get choked though from a supply and demand standpoint. And this is something to just to note for those people who are thinking about operating and, what are you going to go buy? You've got Wheels Up, who's in market for pretty much any 300 or 350. You have Kraft, who's in market for 3s and 3s. You have Baker buying them up. And there's a couple of other operators who are actively seeking Challenger 300s, 3500s, or 350s and 35s. So that market's just going to continue to get supported. And honestly, I don't think that it's a risk. And I think that that's one thing that people think about is, oh, well, then is the Challenger 300 market inflated? I don't think so, because I think that demand from fleet operators is still going to be there for as long as the dispatch reliability stays up. And if Ken Rickey can settle his thing with Honeywell and kind of create a framework for everybody's engine programs, I'd say that the Challenger 300 continues on.
Yeah, definitely. It's a customer favorite. Back when we were starting with Phenom 300s, I saw that as the natural next extension. A 300, 350 fleet is like the perfect fleet. It has everything everybody wants. You got your light jets for your light jet customer, and your super mid pretty much handles any American customer coast to coast, and incredibly comfortable, really nice layout. And honestly, I've heard a lot of good things about Bombardier and working with them. They are, a very positive customer service driven company. Lots are, by the way, not throwing shade on anybody else. But yeah, FlexJet's got to move on to, its Praetors, its Global 7500s. So it doesn't want to keep these things in the fleet for too long at any given time. When we were talking to Ken a month ago, what did he say? Like 15 years is the average turnover time for the aircraft and fleet? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 15 years. So it's a 5-year fractional contract on the front, a second turn on that fractional. So they'll sell the next kind of that aircraft another time at a discount, usually with a higher, maybe operating costs, fluctuate a little bit. And then for 5 years, they take it and they put it in their core fleet that does supplemental lift, that supports sentient jet, that supports kind of the rest of their ecosystem. And it's, those aircraft by the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th year, they're not getting driven as hard as they were kind of in the first 10 years. And then they sell them off as they kind of bring on new aircraft into the fleet. I would have, and he did make a comment that he held on to these for a little longer than he would have liked to. So it's 2025. I would imagine that these are 08, 09 Challengers, I would guess. I mean, again, we can probably go find the tail numbers or, go probably search on JetNet or something.
15,000 hours on them. They're probably pretty well ridden.
Right. But I mean, if they're on condition or if they're in good shape, Baker is the logical buyer here. And it's not an individual buyer. Like that's not the ideal customer for these fleets. And so you have to have these middle market players for the big fleets to send all of their aircraft to. I mean, you look at Vista just sold off a bunch of their Citation 10s, and it has basically created / buoyed 3 or 4 new Citation 10 operators that are now in the ecosystem. So it's good. It all trickles down, which is good news.
Yeah, no, we like to see it. It's fly these birds for as long as they can be flown, and sometimes that can be 30 years and way more than 10,000 hours these engines are rated for. So I love to see it, and I think it's going to be a great plane for them. And hopefully they got some spare engines in this deal too, because they're probably going to need them.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, sometimes passengers can fly for free, which is what you have to be aware of. That's what Netjets learned recently. They have filed a lawsuit against a former lease customer who basically signed up for his contract, paid the deposit, and then never paid again and just kept flying. That's crazy to me. I make the joke that you can't ever fly free unless you have a friend who has a private jet. Like that's the only way that you're ever going to fly free. But I stand corrected. Apparently, for 3 months, you can just fly on Netjets, I guess. I don't know. That's pretty crazy.
This is such a crazy story. Yeah. So Colin Fan, who is like legit. I looked this guy up, former executive at Deutsche Bank and a bunch of other SoftBank, a bunch of places, like clearly a private jet user. I don't know what the story is here completely. So far, it's just Netjets filings that are out there saying that, he signed a lease agreement in March, used it until June. And then they started, cutting him off in like mid-August. And I'm like, how the heck did you sign this customer up, not get a single deposit, like nothing? It just boggles the mind. So I really want to see what Colin has to say. Like, was there a service issue or a delivery of like the aircraft type that he wanted or something? And Netjets has really they redacted a lot of the information in the case. And the judge has actually said like, no, you're going to have to like produce a little more information than this for the public. So it'll be interesting what information comes out of this. But man, it just blows my mind. And where's the discipline on collecting your AR up front? Because think we need a little more of that.
Yeah, no kidding. Whenever there's a good court case on, I love to read Doug Golan because I just picture Doug in his apartment in Miami picking through. He's got his glasses on, he's picking through the case, and he's telling us everything that we need to know so that we don't have to go read it. So thank you, Doug. There's a little shout out for you. We don't know how much it was, but it was over $75,000. So like, we're not talking, yeah, he flew one for free and then didn't get a bill and didn't pay it and that kind of stuff. And it was a lease, not a fractional purchase. So probably what, kind of the speculation is basically he was leasing while he was waiting for the delivery of the aircraft that he was actually a fractional customer on. Maybe, I guess the thing is you don't get to court without giving him a phone call and saying, hey, you're a little behind. No worries, just send us the money, right? Like you don't get into court without some sort of mediation before you get there. I mean, Netjets has an incentive for this information not to get out, but not $75,000 worth, I guess, apparently.
Yeah, well, and two, like there's got to be something here on like a customer service side. I assume, unless, Colin is just like not wanting to pay his bills. But I don't know. It smells to me like there was some sort of delivery issue or there was some part of something where the customer felt slighted, which would give them permission to do this. And then, one thing leads to the next and everyone starts to get litigious. And then there you go in court. But this is absolutely crazy. I can't believe this is coming through. And I cannot wait to see what the response is.
Yeah. Well, another piece of little side tidbit Netjets news is I saw that the Netjets CEO is now moving up in Berkshire Hathaway. So he's like leading the whole hospitality group. There's like a group of companies. So he's moving up. I don't know. Maybe he was like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this right now. I'm moving on up. I would imagine. Or does at a company of the size of Netjets, does that get to the CEO's desk? I'm sure before you go to court, the CEO at least is aware that this is happening, right?
Sure. Oh yeah, definitely. But I mean, but it is kind of small too. Like in the grand scheme of Netjets,
right.
Well, I'm saying small. It's like over 75,000. So we don't know what the total amount is. If it's 75,000, I would think it's worth it to keep it out of the press. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting one. I'm also very curious to see how much gets revealed because it could reveal a lot of competitive information about some of Netjets things that they'll do with customers in terms of leases and jet cards or whatever it is. So we'll see where this heads out. But speaking of things under scrutiny, Kash Patel is in the news now for his use of the government jet.
This is my impersonation of Kash Patel. Like Kash Patel with his eyes, his like eyes are huge like this. It's like the picture. He's like, just looks totally like, bah.
I'm allowed to use the private jet. So, okay, here's my issue with this story. He's becoming another, once again, the private jet is the political football. It always is the political football. He's not actually doing anything different than any previous person, I don't believe. But I don't know, maybe you have a different opinion here. I don't think he can really fly commercially, that's the problem.
Right. Like, I'm sorry, but this is somebody who totally has hits out against their life. Like, let's be honest. Kash Patel, there is definitely a bounty out there to take down the director of the FBI. Like, duh. So what is his other option? You have to stay, like what? Sorry, Kash, you can't leave DC for 4 years at all. Like, period. Of course, he's going to have to use the company jet to be able to go see his girlfriend perform at a wrestling event. By the way, there's a whole story in that, but this is an aviation show, not a dating show, but that's the choice. Then he went to Nashville. So I guess he picked up his girlfriend after her wrestling competition and they went and woo-girled on Broadway in Nashville. And then he went to a Texas hunting ranch. So, but the thing is like, what are we expecting these people to have 0 lives while they work in government? Like, I think that's how we get people that get burnt out in government. Like, and I would bet the people that are career politicians that are kind of squawking about this probably are equally as guilty, if not 10 times more guilty of something similar. So me personally, this is a non-story for me. Like, he's getting flack. That's a bummer. Hate that for him. This is a non-story. Of course he has to fly in the company plane.
Right. Well, and the interesting part of this too, it's come up before. It's like, this is a political thing that gets used sometimes, just to have like a salacious story. But the problem is the way the law is written, essentially, as long as it's for security purposes, you have to use the government airplane, right? Director of the FBI, a lot of people don't like him. there's a security issue there. So obviously he has to use it. The tricky part is, how do they reimburse the government for this personal use of the aircraft? And that's typically the equivalent of a commercial airline ticket, which obviously is so much smaller than whatever it costs to fly a Gulfstream. I can't even remember what version of Gulfstream they have, but that's the law. And if Congress wants to change it, they're welcome to change it, but that's currently what it is. Every single predecessor before him has used this aircraft for the same purposes, has reimbursed them for the personal travel at the commercial airline rate, as always. So I don't know. I agree.
He's making like a couple $100,000 a year. Like, if you're going to mandate that somebody has to fly private, and then you're going to pay him nothing, right? Like, there's a lot of talk around college football because Lane Kiffin's contract leaked, and so did a couple of the other ones. I know that John Summerall's from University of Florida got leaked, and he gets 30 hours of private jet use, either charter or the school plane. It's like, this is a job. It's a necessity of the job / a job perk. Like, I actually, again, don't like government, frivolous spending, but I'm like, this is where we're going to go look. Like, there's probably a lot of other places we could save a buck.
Yeah, well, and the problem, I think what's happening here too is there's not a lot of FBI administrators that are dating a country singer that can be tracked so obviously by ADSB to the various events that they're going to either. So we're living in a new world of information in which, people that are dating interesting people at the FBI, there's a little more context surrounding these trips. But, hey, if they want to change it and they want to make them reimburse it at a higher rate or whatever, so be it. But, don't call them out for doing the same thing that everybody on each side.
Yeah, and you're going to have to raise his salary. Sorry, but like, if you force people to fly in a private jet and then you ask them to pay for it, it's like, I don't know. That just seems like inefficient tax policy. But what do I know? If he wants to go there faster, something the U.S. government will never do is order a Global 8000 because they're made in Canada. But if they wanted to, they could actually get deliveries now because the first Global 8000 from Bombardier has officially been delivered, and this thing is fast. I mean, it is super fast. Mach 0.95. That it's busted the sound barrier. Like, and at 0.95, that's almost like you could accidentally do it. Like, oops, I kind of nudged forward a little bit and we popped the sound barrier. My bad. But yeah, the first delivery went to Patrick Dovigi, founder and CEO of GFL Environmental, which I'm like, that's ironic. Like an environmental guy. That's ironic.
Is it environment cleanup or what? Now I have to.
I don't know. Yeah, now we need to look up the CEO of GFL Environmental. But he has been a Bombardier customer for over 15 years. And the Global 8000 replaces the Global 7500. The thing is that it's really the same. There's like a software patch. We've talked about this on the show before. It's a software patch and a nozzle. Like that's the only two real changes between a 7500 and 8000, but it drops your altitude at 41,000 feet. Your cabin altitude is at 2691, which is like less than Las Vegas, by the way, at 41,000 feet. So you arrive refreshed, feeling good, ready for your business meeting. Apparently, and this is like the most, if you have, for our Canadian friends who listen, and I know that there are some, this is the most Canadian thing to possibly do at a delivery. Canadian rock star Tom Cochrane, who I have no clue who that is, performed at the delivery ceremony. So they had a Canadian rock star out there to celebrate. Congratulations on the new Global 8000.
That Canadian country music, rock music. Sorry,
country must be.
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't realize it, all of these are just new iterations of the Global 6500. And actually, Preston had a really, really good article on clean sheet design, but this is not a clean sheet design. And he talks about the reasons why in his article. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it's awesome. It's the fastest aircraft since the Concorde. There's so much competition in this area. I did look up the environmental company. He's a waste management guy or, trash services guy. They always have so much money. You can't underestimate these garbage guys. Like, that's a good business.
Yeah, I mean, Brad Jacobs did waste management and made billions of dollars. His book's really good, by the way. If you've never read it, How to Make a Few $1 Billion by Brad Jacobs, it's his kind of memoir on company building. Really good read. Very easy to read too. Like you can kind of skip, you can read through it really fast. It's not super deep, but it's really good. There's a lot of really good tidbits in there. So highly recommend reading that book. Book recommendations, I guess, is something that we do now in the VIP seat. But it is time for you to go into the office and talk to all of your friends and tell them how great the show is, because you're going to be more informed when you go into the office today. And that is why we have done this show. So if you like the show, one thing you can do for us, it's free to listen. We don't charge you anything. The one thing we do ask is that you share it with 1 or 2 friends that want to be smarter about business aviation. This is a show by business aviation professionals for business aviation professionals. So it is made for you. Give us some feedback. We love having feedback on the show. Share the newsletters at thevipseat.com. Thanks again to RealJet for sponsoring this week's episode of the VIP Seat. We really appreciate it. And until next week, for Jessie Naor, I am Preston Holland. We will see you next week.